Hello, this is Vernon Alden-Smith at ISDA. Today I would like to show you how using data standards in the common domain model will drive efficiencies in collateral management processes. In 2020, we've provided the foundations for collateral documentation and eligible collateral schedules, plus other components of the collateral events workflow. 2020 has been a good year for collateral initiatives in CDM. So focusing on challenges in collateral management in recent years, you're all familiar with regulations, posting of additional variation, and especially initial margin, increased the volumes of margin calls significantly, and the numbers of participants having to post collateral. There are more institutions involved, both buy and sell side, plus more vendors and administrators providing solutions, but also bringing in the need for more custody accounts and segregation of initial margin. Therefore, custodians now playing a major role in collateral management. These projects take time to plan and execute, with a resource drain for additional documentation and demand on many areas of the organisation. You can see some of the challenges listed here, such as new documentation, custody setups, establishing eligible collateral schedules, managing disputes, better optimisation and efficient settlement. There are many other requirements too, and many of these with the need for regulatory compliance. Having to implement these rules in the timeframes has been a huge undertaking for firms, massive projects under added timeframe pressures. Each participant has been left to implement their own version of the representations of key data that drive collateral processes. This has led to a lack of interoperability between participants. Creating the data standards in CDM will allow systems to follow a common representation, ease integration and support innovations to promote adoption of technology and digital solutions, removing the need for reconciliations, complex translations, and understanding various forms of business logic. Therefore, reducing downstream issues, allowing easier onboarding and transfer of information, bringing operational efficiencies through the entire workflow. This is not just a short-term solution for UMR. It can form the basis for long-term solutions in collateral management processing. Led by priorities from ISDA members through the CDM Collateral Working Group, the initial focus was to provide solutions in CDM for standards for documentation and eligible collateral schedules. The first documents to be modelled in CDM covered a subset of ISDA 2016 initial margin CSAs across different jurisdictions. We work with the ISDA legal team to review and identify all the relevant key data points through the documents to create a standard common digital representation of the CSA in CDM, which can be used to fully represent a functional collateral document. Using this representation, we completed a workflow use case for integration of an IM CSA object in CDM form and how this can be successfully integrated into a vendor collateral platform with ArcadiaSoft. This took place at the end of 2019. This exercise was able to demonstrate the capabilities and promote the efficiencies of CDM and what it can provide for digital standards for collateral processes, especially document representation and portability. Seeing the benefits from this exercise, we wanted to extend the model further to accommodate new generation 2018 IM documents. In Q1 2020, an additional 20 plus documents were identified based on what is available to negotiate in ISDA Create. For these additional documents, we have completed the extension to offer 100 unique election structures in line with this list, which supports IM documents outlined in blue on the slide. This is inclusive of all the ISDA, CSA and CSD publications and the equivalent Clearstream and Euroclear collateral transfer agreements and security agreements from 2016 right the way through to 2019. Following this, a mapping exercise was completed for all initial margin documents currently represented in CDM versus ISDA Create, and a translation mechanism now exists in CDM to fully convert Create data to standard CDM. We are working towards ISDA Create delivering a direct standard CDM format for margin agreement data via the Create API. The CDM standard for this data will facilitate a consistent industry representation that will drive industry portability, STP and integration for collateral management processes. So by springtime in 2020, we had established a model that can digitally represent all IM collateral documentation, tested with an industry member for translation, ingestion and output, thus providing an industry standard form of digital data that can be used and transferred between external platforms and connected to a negotiation platform. Collateral documents having commonality and consistent elections allowed us to extend the model to offer a broader range of documentation. We identified the next sets of documents and modelled the ISDA 2016 variation margin agreements. These required some additional elections to be built to be fully supported. And once completed, these were released into CDM in August last year. These are shown in green on this slide across different jurisdictions. In addition to this development, ISDA are currently in the process of representing the ISDA Master Agreement on a clause-by-clause basis, with the ability to reference other related agreements. I also wanted to mention that the legal agreement structure in CDM supports other forms of legal contracts, such as the trade confirmation, allowing institutions to implement standards across all derivatives processes. So to summarise 2020, it was a successful year for collateral documents in CDM. This now provides a standard industry digital representation of documents that drives the collateral management process. Information can be securely transferred, stored and exchanged from system to system without the need for translating, reducing errors and providing process efficiency. Whilst developing collateral CSAs, we also worked with our legal team to digitise common calculations found within collateral documents, such as the delivery and return amount under paragraph 3. This has been interpreted into digital calculation code within CDM. These will be covered in the second part of the presentation provided by Regnosis. A common issue which has been raised many times in the process for negotiating and agreeing collateral to form the eligible collateral schedule. This has presented several challenges to those negotiating and putting processes in place, whether that's under collateral agreements or under custodian models. Challenges like navigating around different jurisdictions and the regulatory restrictions, agreeing on collateral to be exchanged that fits into multiple regimes, the correct categorization, the correct agency rating bands, and also there's no common descriptions for collateral types, taxonomies, etc. Having to apply the correct haircuts by maturity range is also challenging too. This has led to extensive negotiation timeframes, lots of confusion, inaccurate data, misrepresentation, inefficiencies, and breakdown of processes that can ultimately lead to fouls and costs to the organisation. ISDA has provided different solutions in this space, including the development of pre-prepared regulatory compliant template schedules for use in third-party custodian documents and tri-party, covering a wide range of commonly exchanged sovereign, central government and supranational asset types. But still, issues exist. The root of the problem is in so many cases the representation of data used to compile and represent asset eligibility is so varied and inconsistent throughout the entire cycle. It is evident that there is a requirement for some commonality. Therefore, in CDM, there is an opportunity to provide data standards for eligible collateral schedules that provide a common solution. This lack of common standards and how we interpret information for eligible collateral data and the key data used in collateral agreements and custodian documentation. In some cases, the use of free format tables, like the example shown here on the left, these are populated in various ways between institutions using many expressions of the same information. They are then relayed from system to system with lots of human touch points and manual intervention, leading to downstream inefficiencies with potentially legal and cost associated implications. As a starting point, we looked at opportunities where CDM could provide solutions for eligible collateral schedules, and if key data could be organised to bring further efficiencies. Through member feedback via the ISDA working groups and sourcing various examples, we constructed a model in CDM to represent how this data can be captured, exchanged, and where possible, standardised. What we have achieved in CDM is a standard form of capturing the key information, such as collateral issue information, collateral asset or product type, maturity ranges, agency ratings, valuation percentages and haircuts. This will lead to institutions involved in the workflow cycle exchanging digitised standard eligible collateral information accurately and efficiently, removing the manual nature and inaccuracies, to allow transfer of clean data to various destinations, such as a vendor platform, collateral systems, custody setups, and so on. So speeding up the negotiation, the data becomes more portable, improving STP. In addition, these standards provide a common approach for identifying and describing collateral assets. ISDA spent several months working with members on a data structure in CDM, which provides a standard way to clearly identify collateral issuers and asset types, using various identifiers and the capacity to express concentration limits. The data components and how they can be used to construct eligible collateral will be covered in more detail throughout the next part of the presentation provided by Regnosis. So, how do all these data structures fit together into one workflow? This slide shows you how current individual CDM components can be used together to link a collateral process workflow. In this case, a collateral initial margin workflow. In step 1, a negotiation procedure can take place outside of the process in ISDA Create or an equivalent negotiation platform or legal platform. An executed agreement and its relevant data elections can be represented in CDM code. In step 2, CDM can provide the standard calculation for determining your margin amount, referencing the objects referenced in the CSA contract. Step 3, CDM representation of eligible collateral schedules can be used as observation specifying collateral selection or used as a standard form of representation to increase portability and transfer of accurate digital data. Step 4, your selected collateral object to be moved or transferred to a segregated custody account, in this case for initial margin. Exactly the same workflow can work for variation margin, but requires different inputs. Rather than a calculated initial margin amount, it's reliant on the mark-to-market population of the trades within the portfolio. Obviously, certain firms may only be interested in individual elements and focus areas of the process that may be relevant to their business model or service. Others may be looking at a bigger picture to build a full collateral events process workflow. ISDA will be interested to speak to you about any related use case or additional items that can be added to this workflow or other independent collateral process functions where CDM standards could provide efficiencies. Our intention is to enrich and extend the current foundations, and we look forward to providing further efficiencies in collateral management. This progress and preparation has positioned CDM collateral documents and eligible collateral schedules for integration opportunities with several external platforms using CDM standards in production and leading the way for interoperability between institutions. In Q3 and Q4 2020, we've concentrated on enriching the standards and validating them with collateral platforms and services and members as follows. Firstly, ISDA Create. A translation adapter now exists in CDM to convert ISDA Create to CDM for all documents supported. To extend this, we are working closely with the ISDA Create and Linklaters team on a technical exercise to be able to deliver a direct standard CDM format via the Create API. This standard can then be directly consumed by a vendor or in-house collateral platform to form an important link in the information exchange cycle. With ArcadiaSoft, we work with the vendor all through 2020. They've been fully supportive and validated the development of both documentation and eligible collateral schedules throughout a series of workshops. We demonstrated compatibility of CDM, initial margin digital documentation standards with ArcadiaSoft, extending the coverage of the new generation IM documents through verifying the election structures. We validated the workflow by negotiating a digital document through ISDA Create Sandbox between ISDA and the Arcadia platform, using translation synonyms to ingest a CDM document into a UAT vendor service. Results from these workshops have identified the relevant adaptations required in Agreement Manager to be compatible to achieve using CDM standard for collateral documents and eligibility. This work will be completed in Q1 2021. Once the ISDA Create API work is complete to deliver CDM representation, the plan is to transform CDM output in the interface between AM and the ISDA Create. This is likely to be in Q2 this year. The vendor service Vermeg, who have been supportive throughout and contributed in working group meetings and provided example data to validate the model. In November, we did 2 half-day workshops to assess compatibility technical integration and workflow opportunities, focused documentation and complex eligibility examples. And we're looking forward to confirming use cases with potential to work towards integration with CDM this year. With Clearstream, again, the custodian has been supportive through the working group, and we've been in regular contact this year with a focus on the eligible collateral schedules model. We completed an exercise to create the CDM equivalent of a global custodian Clearstream initial margin schedule using the use of taxonomy sources, regulatory category types, and continue to work on further examples. Also, we shared details of the model structure, and we're looking forward to working on specific use cases this year. With Barclays, they've been very interested in CDM for various processes, with the end-to-end collateral workflow especially, linking operational points from legal agreement terms to margin and collateral events. More recently, been working on an exercise to complete identifying and compare data equivalents for IM documents with CDM versus the Barclays structure. This year, we will pursue collateral optimization opportunities through eligible collateral schedules and look at processes involving tokenized transfer of assets. Looking ahead into this year, building on this foundational work in 2020, we wanted to extend the model where required with additional documents and workflows for collateral management. Support from members through the CDM working groups will help drive this. We will focus on supporting adoption of CDM into production of the external platforms using the collateral documentation and eligible collateral schedules model. Further development will include extensions in CDM of collateral documents represented in legal agreements, starting off with the 1995 ISDA CSA for variation margin. Analysis work is already underway for this. In addition, potentially standard amendment agreements will be added too. We will look to complete CDM data structure for margin call issuance and response based on the 2018 ISDA best practice. We will then engage with members for support and validation of this. Further enhancement and extensions to the eligible collateral schedules model, where the CDM structure can be applied to the negotiation process of documents and also leveraged in the ISDA clause library work. We can also look at other areas of collateral management as we build out a full collateral event workflow. This can include dispute management, custody onboarding, optimization, and settlement efficiencies, including standards for SSIs. ISDA is speaking to other trade associations on where documentation and collateral workflow efficiencies can be leveraged in CDM. Similarly, the legal agreement structure can be used to represent GMRA, GMSLA documentation, and also elements of eligibility can be reused. ISLA, the Securities Lending Trade Association, are already developing standards with CDM and recently hosted a showcase to demonstrate a pilot for using CDM in stock lending processes, covering contract standards, trade execution, allocations, and settlement. This has leveraged 3 years of ISDA data standard development in CDM that can be extended across various industry processes outside of OTC derivatives. The proof of concept was successful and a key step for CDM with potential to expand SFT processes development for this year. We have now reached the end of the presentation. Hopefully I've highlighted the benefits of CDM standards in collateral management, but also the need for wide participation and industry adoption to achieve long-term solutions for interoperable standard connections. This will lead to less reliance on reconciliations, translations, and understanding various forms of business logic. Future workflows will offer cost-effective, secure, clean, shorter processes, reducing errors and downstream issues. If interested in directly following CDM collateral initiatives or participating in the CDM collateral working group, please contact myself, Vernon Alden-Smith at ISDA. Thank you.